I'm guessing you're here because there's been some sort of hiccup in your trying to conceive plan. Maybe you've been trying for 6 months and the first few months were filled with excitement. You couldn't wait to take that pregnancy test. And then it slowly started to turn. Now, each time, there's a pit in your stomach and fear coursing through your body. Maybe you've gotten to the point where you've turned to modern medicine to help you conceive, which was something you maybe never thought would happen. You don't know how you got here, spending your money, time, and energy on procedures that give you a chance at pregnancy. Or maybe you're someone who has experienced loss, failed IUIs, transfers that didn't stick, or even miscarriages. What once was such a moment of joy and hope was just taken from you unexpectedly. And maybe you're all three. Like most of us on this trying to conceive path, despite our heartaches, we keep marching forward with barely a flinch. Why? Because time's of the essence, right, people? There's no time, or at least it feels like there's no time to sit with feelings when fertility seems to be declining at every moment, or so we're told, right? Many women, including myself, got bombarded with messages of trying to stay positive the whole time, to just keep going, that their time is going to come. You may also have this notion that you have to always be in this good, positive mindset to be worthy of receiving a baby, right? So you try to stay positive. You try to be there all the time for your pregnant friends. You try to maybe just only have positive affirmations and just keep marching forward no matter what has happened. But let's be honest, that doesn't work. And while I talk about the end goal being that place of resilience, of well-being, of confidence within your journey and yourself, there's a key component to get from where you're at to there. There's something blocking you there. And I'm going to tell you what that is today. Welcome to the Tru Fertility Podcast. I'm your host, Lea Nicole Trujillo, therapist turned fertility emotional wellness coach, and I'm here to share the tools that helped me and my clients reclaim their joy, unpause their lives, and triple their pregnancy rates. With a 100% success rate in emotional well-being and a 60% pregnancy rate, I'm here to radically transform your journey. Join me and my amazing guests for expert strategies, practical tips, and real-life trying to conceive stories with a dash of girl talk. So let's sprinkle some baby dust because it's time for Tru Fertility. I wanted to start this conversation with kind of where I was at a certain place of my trying to conceive journey. I remember having a failed stimulation cycle. And as soon as that happened, the doctor came in, he said it wasn't going to work, and then essentially said, okay, we can start with you next cycle. So as soon as you get your period, we'll just go ahead and get you set up for another round of stims. And, again, there's just this rush of one thing to the next. There's no time, or there wasn't any time to just be able to process what the hell I just went through, right? And how much I had invested in this for it to not work. I also remember just trying to stay so strong, like when I'm at work. I remember, a coworker sharing news of a mutual friend and colleague that, oh, guess what? Guess who's pregnant again? It's her third child, in the midst of me having a miscarriage that she was unaware of, right? And just trying to stay so positive and happy for this other person when I was really dying inside, right? Even with my husband, I also sometimes would be kind of starting to deal with some of these emotions that I was feeling, and he'd walk in and I'd try to just turn it around and put on a happy face. I didn't want to bring him down or kind of spend our evening in a place where I was, upset or crying, right? I had this other thought that I needed to be this positive and hopeful and happy person because that's who I had saw myself as. I always had thought of myself as this, again, happy-go-lucky person. And I didn't want to deal with this new side of me that kept coming up. But the more that I tried to distance myself from this other depth of emotion that infertility was bringing up for me, the more easily things that would happen would tend to break this camel's back of mine, right? Which I would get to this really emotional place quickly, right? I was just also so focused on the physical aspects of fertility, like the supplements, diet, and even exercise, right? As a way maybe to distract myself from all of these complex emotions that I was feeling. And again, kind of after my miscarriage, this is when I really knew something needed to change because there was kind of no holding back. I was in a very negative place as much as I tried to sugarcoat it. One of the first steps that I had on my journey of my transformation, of my mental health transformation here, is I joined a support group. So when it was my turn to share my story, I was kind of amazed at what had happened. It was like a floodgate opened. I cried so much that it was hard for me to even articulate the words because I was, trying to hold back these tears, right? It was like a wave that came over me. It was then that I realized how much I had been holding in and bottling up. And now that I look back, I know now that letting go, allowing myself to feel the grief that I've experienced was necessary for me to move forward. So I deliberately started spending time with myself, with my feelings, and my grief. I decided not to hide from it anymore. I welcomed it, as hard as that sounds, and carved out time for me to actually sit with my feelings. And over time, I started to feel lighter, less on edge, and in a place where I could actually start to implement some of these other things that were meant to get me to a better place and be more receptive to them. And really there is the only place that you can really build from. So that is what this podcast episode, this piece of the puzzle is really all about. Releasing the hurt, the pain, the fear, and the sadness that's tied to your current trying to conceive journey. Has infertility taken too much from you? Are you unsure how you can keep going on this path? Maybe you've tried some affirmations, but it's just not cutting it. If this sounds like you need the Resilience Roadmap for Trying to Conceive. It's a free step-by-step guide to reclaim your joy and unpause your life that I use with clients to get unparalleled results. Get yours today by going to www.leanicolecoaching.com. That's LEANICOLE coaching.com, or check the show notes for the link. I want to remind you guys that this shit's hard, right? Dealing with infertility is really hard on you. It is a traumatic part of your life, often very unexpected, right? And the even more challenging piece of it is that many people around you aren't recognizing it as such. They think, oh, you're having a harder time having a baby. Not that big of a deal, right? Oh, maybe you can just adopt, right? They're not recognizing the extreme loss, the fear that is tied to this. And I want to also give you a little bit of data because it has been shown to be as traumatic, as stress inducing as cancer. Literally, research has shown that for us. It is life altering. Many women, I'd say a little more than half, that's what the research says, note that it's the most stressful experience that they have ever encountered. And honestly, the expectations that society puts on us, that even we buy into, is that we're expected to kind of get up, put a smile on, and be happy to wait for our child to come with no expectation there, to jump from one cycle to the next of treatment, right? To be happy for others who are, thriving in life and doing the things that we are, reaching to do, and be happy for others who are starting their families without any hiccups. And in reality, it's an unfair task to put on ourselves, right? We have to give ourselves the time and space to recognize this. And I also want to point out that as much of a mental toll this is on us, again, our mind and body are one, right? This stored grief, if we don't deal with this, if we don't deal with how much of an impact it has had on our hearts, the losses that have accumulated over the years, the loss of, the path that we had envisioned for ourselves, it literally can change you physically as well. Repressed emotions, repressed trauma, that can actually spike those cortisol levels, that stress hormone, right? And that leads you to having increased inflammation in your body. Inflammation is often the root contributor to many infertility diagnoses. In fact, over 70% of women who struggle with infertility have increased inflammation in their body, and it really impacts all of the cells in your body. These, feelings of anxiety, stress, and overwhelm, they start to lead to these alarms going off internally. Alarms in your body saying that you aren't safe, right? And when this message is blaring through your body, the first bodily symptom or the first bodily system to shut down is your reproductive system because it's not essential to keep you alive, right? That's kind of like the bonus part. Now, to even bring this home for you even further, I wanted to share with you some long-standing research that has highlighted how interconnected our mind, our emotions, our experiences, our trauma is to our physical health. And that is through the study that has been done with ACEs. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And the research on this has been astounding. So the more ACEs or childhood experiences that have been challenging to deal with, such as an example could be going through a divorce, right? Other examples include things like, having witnessed a traumatic event, having experienced any sort of neglect, physical abuse, right? The more ACEs you have can increase the risk of things like developing chronic diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, respiratory issues. In fact, the risk of those things is 2 to 3 times higher for people with those experiences, with those ACEs. It even affects your blood pressure, which is, again, your heart functioning, and gastrointestinal tract diseases and symptoms. This is essentially saying you may have experienced something in your childhood that is leading you to have increased health conditions because those things may not have been dealt with. So this little detour is really just, again, to highlight the direct connection between challenging experiences and your health state. So again, it is so important to start to heal this in order to have the health and the fertility that you are looking for. So it's really important, even if you're just thinking about this on a physical level, to be able to process your grief, to deal with this so it doesn't impact the way that your body is responding, right? And aside from that physical part, again, what about this idea of, just being positive, just staying happy? Can we just go to that place? As much as I'd love to tell you, you can, right? You can't just affirmation your way to happiness if you haven't dealt with the underlying grief. That is essentially like putting a Band-Aid over a wound that needs stitches, right? Essentially, you may have moved on to the next thing, trying to move on, trying to go to that next cycle, trying to just stay positive, but your body and your spirit haven't. You have to move through your grief. You can't just go around it. Now, maybe some of you listening are thinking, I don't know, I don't really feel like I'm that emotional about this. And that may be the case on a conscious level. However, there can be stored grief that is showing up in physical symptoms that you may not really realize are tied to not fully recognizing and dealing with everything that you have been through. And I want to go through a couple of those with you today as well. So some of the body signs that you may have that can be tied to emotional states include things like headaches, tension in your jaw, tense muscles, back, shoulders. That definitely was one for me. Teeth grinding, upset stomach. Those are some of the physical symptoms that you may experience that can be related to your underlying psychological state, right? Emotional state. You also might find yourself to be pretty emotionally reactive. And I touched on this earlier. So maybe if something small doesn't go your way, or maybe there's a minor inconvenience that crosses your path. Somebody cuts in front of you in traffic, and maybe you like go off. You get extremely angry. Maybe you feel really overwhelmed if, again, one small thing doesn't go your way. Those are all signs that there's something deeper going on that you need to deal with. Another sign of stored grief is maybe having these types of thought loops. So maybe you're really thinking a lot about something that happened in the past, and maybe you're critical of what you did or didn't do, or you're thinking forward in the future of all of these worst case scenarios, right? So those types of thought loops also are signs that there is some stored grief going on. So now that we've covered what this can look like, what are some signs of this, why this is so important to deal with this grief, let's talk a little bit about ways to actually start to process this grief and how can we move forward. This is your personal invite to join our exclusive Facebook group to dive deeper into the world of fertility with bonus clips, behind-the-scenes content, and intimate discussions. Here you can connect with fellow tribe members, share your experiences, and contribute your insights to shape the future of the show. And it's easy to join. Just search Tru Fertility Tribe on Facebook, answer a few questions, and you're in. I also have the direct link in the show notes below. See you there. So the first one I want to talk to you about is as simple as allowing yourself to sit with it and to cry it out or to feel whatever emotions that is coming up. Now, I know saying that it sounds simple, but it can be really scary to allow yourself to go here because it's kind of like letting a genie out of a bottle. You may be fearful that you don't know if you're going to just turn into this person who's crying all the time, right? When you're going to stop. Um, and you may also feel like, okay, I see myself as this strong person, and I don't want to then start doing these behaviors in which I'm just spending hours maybe crying, right? But I want to remind you that crying is not weak. It takes so much courage to be able to face these emotions. It's really brave, right? And so I promise you that is not in line with any sense of weakness or any piece of weakness. Um, and again, if you're worried about becoming this different person, yes, when you first allow yourself to feel, there is going to be more bouts of emotion, but that will taper off. I promise you, you will not be this, person who's just crying nonstop every day, right? It will stop. It will taper down. You will get there, but you do have to go through it. And I also want to point out that there are some actual benefits to crying. It releases your feel-good hormones like oxytocin, um, endorphins, and all of these things actually help relieve this emotional pain. They boost your mood, they improve your sense of well-being, and even help with physical pain, as crazy as that sounds. Um, Once you cry, I think most of you know, like you do feel better. It is amazing at how well it can actually calm you down once you just let it out, right? Crying also activates your parasympathetic nervous system. And again, as we mentioned earlier, I've talked about your body having these alarms saying you're not safe, right? And so this activation of the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of that. So it's shifting into this rest and digest state, and you will again start to feel calmer. Um, and last but not least, it definitely also helps you in sleeping. So I know many of you are still also struggling with having good sleep during this process and this time. So again, crying is good for you on so many fronts. Another way to help process this grief and to deal with this is by talking, right? As I mentioned earlier, I talked to a support group and kind of let it out in that form and fashion. But also just if you have a trusted friend, a family member, talking to them about your experience and really letting it all out, right? Really sharing your truth, helps you so much in making sense of what has happened to you, in releasing those emotions and feeling more at peace. This is essentially tied to a piece of therapy that is often helpful for grief. And it's essentially called narrative therapy. So you can do this just by talking to somebody that you feel safe with. Another way to take this on is to journal. And journaling is a very private and very safe way to fully release everything that's been on your mind. It's actually one of my absolute favorite tools to use whenever, I'm thinking of should I do this or that, whenever I am just feeling really frustrated or overwhelmed. This is my place to just kind of let it all out. And again, it's similar to that narrative therapy is that, again, if you start to try to make sense of everything, it helps you process everything that you've been through and have a much better understanding of it as well. So again, really cathartic, really helpful. Last but not least, for those of you who have experienced some sort of a loss, whether that's, a chemical pregnancy, a miscarriage, even failed transfers, I really consider those as losses as well. doing some sort of ritual around that can really bring a sense of closure. So when I say ritual, I mean the sense that, when somebody dies in our society, we typically have some sort of ceremony for them, whatever your religion is or whatever your traditions are. You hold those, you mourn them. There's an actual event to do for that, or process to do for that loved one that has passed. And we could apply that same principle to our losses with fertility. So an example is that you could maybe plant something in memory of the loss that you experienced and say a few words with it as well. So those are a few ways to help support this grieving process. Again, it really is the first step to healing the pain of infertility, to bringing you to a happier place, to set you up for that success, and to also start to heal your body from within. And again, I want to just remind you, it's not something that may be just a one-off thing, as nice as that might be for some of us. But it can be ongoing. So when you need to, you can always come back here. Once you do it a few times, once you will become more comfortable with this process, and know that this is just a temporary thing to get you closer to emotional wellness, right? If you need any help with this, I'm here for you. This is actually a key component of my work with clients. We do some more specialized activities to really help you see your full journey and help you process through it all. And again, I've been there too, and I know how much is on your heart right now. So I'm here for you with that. So in summary here, infertility, again, it's hard as hell. We need to acknowledge that, and it can be very heavy. We can't just pretend otherwise that it's fine and just try to cover it up with this positivity constantly, or just try to fast forward by just trying to just go to the end goal, having a baby, right? And that's going to heal all of these wounds. You do have to go through this to feel better on the other side. And this stored grief that I've talked about that maybe you haven't dealt with, it can significantly affect your body physically, affecting your health and your fertility. And sometimes we're so disassociated from it, you don't even realize that you have this stored grief because you're just on this go, go, go. But again, reminder, your body does give you some physical clues and signs. So I urge you to pay attention to them. And once we're at this acceptance place that, yes, I do need to go ahead and process this grief and deal with it, there are a few different ways that I've outlined here: crying, journaling, talking with someone, doing a ritual. And again, if you need any help with this, I'm here for you. I've been there. I'm ready to hold your hand through this and get you to the other side. Wishing you all peace and love. I'm always here in your corner. Thank you for allowing me to share these stories, information, and tips with you, or really just allowing me to connect with you on a subject that's so dear and important to your life. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and do me a solid and share this with your friends or anyone that you think might benefit from hearing this. Also, I'd love it if you could leave a rating or review for a deeper dive on today's episode, bonus content, and to connect with others in this space. I invite you to join Tru Fertility Tribe Facebook group. And last but not least, let's be friends on Instagram, where I post almost daily. You can find me at Tru Fertility. Wishing you all baby dust. Till next time. Bye.